The coffee had just started percolating when he asked, "Should I go ahead and block off that weekend for your sister's wedding?" I didn't mean to freeze, but I did, just for a second. Then I gave him that smile, the one that says, "Let's not make a thing out of this." "My parents, well, still prefer Daniel," I said, trying to make it sound casual. "You know, my ex, I don't want to make them uncomfortable." He didn't argue, didn't look angry, just nodded once. "Understood." I kissed his cheek like it was nothing, like he hadn't just been told he wasn't welcome. "Hey, if you're here listening, do me one favor. Hit subscribe and tap the like button. You'd be surprised how much it helps us keep these stories going." He went quiet after that, still helpful, still warm in all the practical ways, but something in his energy pulled back. He wasn't cold, he was careful, like someone measuring the temperature of a room before deciding to step in. That evening, I was holding up 2 dresses in front of the mirror, silver or emerald, when I caught him at the corner of my eye. At his desk, hands steady, back straight, he slid a USB from a drawer, plugged it in, and stared at the screen. Long, focused. I asked him something. I think it was about whether the hem looked too long, but he didn't respond right away. When he did, it was polite, disconnected. "The green's fine," he said without turning around. I figured he was tired. The week had been long. We were both stretched thin with work. I didn't push. What I didn't see, what I didn't think to see, was the small manila envelope now lying open on his desk. I'd noticed it before in passing. It had always been marked in black pen, "In case." He left it out for exactly 4 minutes, then slid it back in, sealed it, and tucked it into his briefcase. The next day, things were normal, or at least they seemed that way. He made us both oatmeal, loaded the dishwasher, even reminded me to pick up a gift for the wedding. I remember laughing when he said, "Don't forget to sign the card," or "Your sister will assume you're disowning her." I laughed too. I didn't notice how he watched me when I laughed, like he was memorizing something. On Friday, I laid out my clutch, the heels, the earrings. He poured 2 glasses of wine, and we sat on the couch, talking about nothing. "You sure you'll be okay this weekend?" I asked. He smiled. "Of course." But there was something final in the way he said it. I remember falling asleep before him. That part stands out. He usually drifted off fast. That night, I woke around 2 a.m. and saw the glow of his laptop screen across the room. He was still awake, typing slowly. I didn't say anything, just rolled over and shut my eyes again. It never occurred to me that he wasn't typing emails, that he wasn't working late, that he was, in fact, erasing himself from my life in perfect silence. He still made me coffee that morning, still walked me to the car. I told him I'd text during the reception, maybe FaceTime after dessert. He nodded, said, "Take your time." And when I pulled out of the driveway, I caught one last glance of him through the rearview mirror. He didn't wave, didn't go back inside, just stood there, still, watching, hands in his pockets, like someone waiting for a door to close. I left before sunrise. He offered to make me breakfast, but I told him not to fuss. My makeup was already done, and I didn't want to smudge anything. I wore the emerald dress. He'd said it looked fine, and packed a pair of flats for later, just in case my heels gave out by the second dance. He helped zip me up in the hallway mirror. Quiet hands, warm, but distant. "You look great," he said. I smiled, kissed him on the cheek, and grabbed my clutch. "I'll text during dinner," I called as I opened the door. He didn't answer right away, then softly, "Take your time." And I left. I didn't know that while I was turning onto Interstate 10, he was rolling back the sleeves of an old work shirt and opening the bedroom closet. Every drawer I'd ever seen him use, every hanger with his jacket or slacks or pressed shirts, was now a checklist. He folded each shirt deliberately, crisp corners, one by one. He didn't rush. He took breaks to log into accounts, the electric, the water, internet. One by one, they disappeared under confirmed cancellations. The couch pillow where he'd usually rest his elbow while reading, gone. The razor from the bathroom counter, packed. The coffee grinder he always insisted on using, grounds taste better fresh, cleaned and boxed. By 11:43 a.m., the condo looked the same if you glanced quick, but he wasn't in it anymore. Not in the drawer handles, not in the toothbrush cup, not in the scent of his cologne on the towel rack. Nothing left to ask about. He wiped both laptops. The shared one first, then his own. His phone was factory reset before noon. The joint account we used for groceries was zeroed out to the cent. with half wired to a traceable holding, not out of spite, just balance. He didn't leave a mess. He didn't slam a door. The only sound was the soft clink of a mug he washed and set on the drying rack, the one I gave him 3 Christmases ago, the one with the crooked gold letter J. He left it behind. By 12:06 p.m., he stood in the doorway with a bag over his shoulder and nothing in his eyes. The walls still had our pictures. The scent of my perfume still lingered in the air. He placed one envelope on the table. No return address, no threats, just 8 words, inked in the neat, quiet handwriting I used to love. You never had to explain. I understood. Then he turned off the lights, pulled the door shut behind him, and disappeared into a world where I no longer existed. And I would know it for hours. The band was setting up when I sent the text, "Dinner's starting, hope you're okay." He always liked the little yellow heart, said it reminded him of warm things, quiet loyalty. It felt like the right tone, gentle, reassuring, a nudge that I hadn't forgotten him completely, even if he wasn't invited. I slipped the phone back into my clutch and took my seat at the family table. White linens, candles, name cards written in gold ink. Daniel, the Daniel, was 3 chairs down with my cousins. My mother introduced him to the florist like he still belonged. I smiled like none of it touched me. Every few minutes I glanced down. No reply, not even the delivered timestamp yet. I figured reception was bad. By the time the salads were cleared, I started to feel it. Not guilt, something quieter, an awareness. I checked again. Still nothing. During the best man speech, my father leaned toward me and whispered, "He's not coming later, is he?" I shook my head. We talked about it. "It's okay." He gave a short nod but didn't look convinced, just returned his attention to the mic where the groom was now laughing about college memories. At 6:42, my phone vibrated sharply in my lap. I checked the screen. My father's name. Calling. 3 missed calls in a row. I stepped outside to take a breath. Maybe something had happened. Maybe he'd had an emergency or needed something from the apartment. I tried calling him back. Straight to voicemail. The 4th buzz came as I stood under a string of patio lights near the parking lot. It wasn't from him. The message was short. From the landlord. Unit vacated, keys returned, mailbox cleared. I stared at it, reading the line 3-4 times. The words didn't process all at once. They arrived in pieces. Vacated, returned, cleared. I pulled up our shared account app. Error. Tried logging into our streaming service. Password invalid. I opened his text thread. Still blank. No little dots. No typing. The patio door opened behind me. My mother's voice. "They're bringing out the cake. Come on, what's wrong?" I turned around slowly. Smiled like nothing was wrong. "He's fine," I said. And I walked back inside. But I didn't hear the music anymore. Didn't see the lights. Couldn't taste the wine. My whole body was listening for something, a sound, a breath, a message. But there was nothing, no updates, no signal, just absence. My father knocked on my hotel door at 7:10 a.m. His tie was still half on from the night before. No greeting, no coffee, just, "Where is he?" I rubbed my temples. "What do you mean?" He held up his phone. I called. He's gone. Disconnected. Mailbox full. So I contacted his attorney. That made me sit up straighter. "You what?" He was already pacing, voice low and clipped. "Don't give me that look, Elena. You might be able to ghost your boyfriend like a college fling, but this man moved out without a word. That's not romantic." That's calculated. I got dressed slowly, not because I didn't feel the urgency, but because it grounded me. One shoe, then the other, lip balm, watch, deep breath. "He's not the type to be reckless," I said mostly to myself. "He's not the type to forget everything either," my father snapped. "He left no forwarding, no explanation. You didn't even fight?" I shook my head. He said, "Understood." That was it. Dad stopped pacing, looked at me like I'd spoken in another language. "And you believe that meant everything was fine?" His phone buzzed again. He stepped into the hallway. I could hear part of the conversation, muffled, tense. Then one sentence clear as day. "Legally and personally, he's fulfilled all obligations." When he came back in, he was holding the phone like it weighed more than it should. "He's off the grid," his lawyer said, verbatim. "There are no pending liabilities, no joint assets, no claims or disputes." "That's impossible," I whispered. But it wasn't, not really. Because 3 years ago, when we started that little green tech startup with my brother, he'd insisted we split equity with clear designations. Clean lines, he'd called it, prevents future awkwardness. I'd laughed back then. He'd drafted the paperwork himself. Even flagged a clause to me once, joking that if I ever decided he was a burden, I'd be protected from his shares. But the reverse was also true. My brother burst into the suite around 9:30, holding his laptop and looking like someone had just shown him his own autopsy report. He transferred his equity, he said, weeks ago, to a trust. A trust? A charitable trust, filed under Greenreach, a climate NGO out of Oregon. And, get this, Clause 14.2. Once it triggers, no one with familial or prior business ties can claim managerial or profit control. I stared at him. Is that legal? It's airtight, he muttered, scrolling fast. And it triggered automatically, retroactive to the day he vacated. My father sat down on the edge of the bed, slowly, like his knees had forgotten how to bend. He planned this. No one corrected him. My brother stood silent, I stood silent, and in that silence, 1,000 little truths began falling into place. Every time I'd brushed off his careful habits, every time I'd said, "Relax, you worry too much," every time I'd made him feel optional. Now he was gone, and the first real message he left behind was a clause. I didn't start the search with guilt. I started it with certainty. Certainty that he must have left a breadcrumb, a receipt, a login, a line of metadata that said, "I was here." The first bank rejected my request. No authority on file. The second one had already closed the joint account. His email, the one we use for everything from lease renewals to vet appointments, bounced with a user not found error. I tried recovering his cloud password. The security questions were changed. Even the backup email was wiped. I called the dealership. The Toyota was gone. Sold 2 days before the wedding. Private party, no trade-in. No record of where it went. I tried his barber, Tom. They used to talk for hours about jazz and old movies. I showed up midweek pretending I needed a trim. He blinked at me. He moved? Didn't he tell you? Tom smiled gently, shook his head, said goodbye like a man who meant it. At that point, my hands weren't steady anymore. My voice cracked once, asking if he'd left a forwarding address. Tom just raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to find him? I didn't answer. I left. I visited his mother. She was polite, careful with her words. He said he was tired of noise, as she offered, said he wanted to build something quiet. I asked where. She stirred her tea. He didn't say, but he left on good terms. That stuck with me. On good terms. The kind of phrase you say when you've been asked not to help. I went home and stared at a blank screen for hours. Eventually, my father caved and hired someone, not a PI, not officially, just someone who handles things discreetly. Retired law enforcement, now working for firms that specialize in asset tracing and digital disappearance. 2 weeks later, he reported back. My father read his notes out loud, slow and disbelieving. He sold or deleted all connected devices, SIM cards destroyed, metadata purged, subscriptions canceled, no utilities, no medical appointments, no vehicle registration. A pause. No known employment, no traceable tax filings, nothing in the lower 48 states, Alaska, or territories. I swallowed hard. So he's just gone? The man nodded. Not exactly. There's one anomaly. He handed over a grainy photo of a postmarked envelope. Canada, British Columbia. No return address, but routed through a rural postal drop. He tapped a line. Same drop appears monthly. Same narrow time frame, same handwriting. Someone's sending secure letters from a cabin town near Mount Waddington. I leaned closer. What's in the letters? He shrugged. That I can't say. But I can say this. He covered everything, even his digital shadows. For the first time, I realized I wasn't searching for closure. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I was trying to reestablish control, and he'd made sure that wasn't an option. 2 years. That's how long it had been since I heard his voice. Since that morning, he zipped up the back of my dress like we were still something solid. I told myself I'd moved on. Therapy, routines, a new apartment with brighter light. I dated again, twice seriously, both men kind, available, present, but neither lasted past the 3rd month. I told friends I just needed time. The truth was quieter than that. I'd stopped expecting him to come back, but I hadn't stopped noticing the space he left behind. It was a Thursday when I found him again. I'd gone with my friend Nina to one of those wellness spas in Sonoma, the kind with overpriced green juice and magazines and soft pastel bins. She was getting a hot stone massage, and I was waiting in the lounge wrapped in a robe, flipping through the latest issue of Earth Frame, a glossy monthly about sustainable architecture, permaculture, all that back to the land stuff he used to talk about like gospel. I was halfway through a story on off-grid communities when I saw it. A photo, full-page spread, a man on a metal scaffold lowering a solar panel into position. No helmet, just gloves and a windbreaker. His back was to the valley, arms steady. He was leaner than I remembered. His beard had filled in, hair shorter, sun-streaked, but the eyes were his. Focused, calm, clear. I froze mid-breath. The caption beneath the photo read, "Volunteer Architect, Unnamed by Request, Westridge Housing Project, BC." My fingers curled around the page. My skin went cold against the warm robe. I stared for 5 full minutes, trying to convince myself I was wrong. But the set of his shoulders, the way he stood like he belonged, but didn't need to prove it. That was him. It had to be. I tore out the page before I realized I'd done it. Folded it once, then again, slipped it into the pocket of the robe like a crime. The receptionist noticed my face when I came out. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. I nodded too fast. "Yeah, just dehydrated." I didn't tell Nina, not at first. Instead, I spent that night combing through Westridge Housing Project sites. Most were outdated, a few had recent photos, but none of the team were named. Everything said community-led, volunteer-based, anonymously funded. I found a short blurb on a funding partners page. Greenreach, the same NGO his trust had been routed through. That nearly broke me. He hadn't just left. He'd kept going, deeper, quieter, farther. I stared at the man in the photo for hours, enlarged the image, scanned the background, looking for something, anything that might tell me how to find him again. But there was nothing. Just forest, scaffold, sky, and him, the man I used to live with, the man I'd uninvited from a wedding because his presence might have made someone else uncomfortable. Now I was the one on the outside, and the man in the photo. He wasn't looking back. The flight to British Columbia was long and quiet. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Nina, not even the therapist I'd been dutifully seeing every other Thursday for a year. I booked it in silence, packed light, and printed the photo from the magazine like it was a passport. The town was smaller than I expected. One general store, a diner with no Wi-Fi, a lumber co-op tucked into the trees, its roof rusted along one edge, sawdust trailing out the open doors like breadcrumbs. I showed the photo to the girl at the register. She gave a small smile, shrugged, and said, "He's in and out, doesn't talk much." So I waited 3 days. I sat in the diner during the mornings, then walked the gravel lot by the co-op in the afternoons, pretending to scroll my phone even though I had no signal. I slept in a rented room above a bait shop, the kind with floral curtains and a space heater that hummed like a distant engine. On the 3rd afternoon, I saw him. He walked out just before dusk, carrying a bundle of wood slats under one arm, a notebook under the other. His jacket was faded and torn at the cuffs. His jeans were stiff with wear, hands calloused, thinner but solid. I didn't say his name. I just moved slowly toward him, boots crunching the gravel. He saw me. Didn't flinch, didn't blink. He stopped walking. Let me close the distance. I stood there for a second too long, unsure what to do with my arms. "You really left everything?" I asked. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. He didn't speak right away, just studied me, not angrily, not cold, measured, calm, like someone remembering a language he hadn't spoken in years. Then he said, "The moment I realized uncomfortable meant invisible. Yes." The words hit harder than I expected. I stepped forward, not fast, just enough to let my hand hang open, low between us. He didn't take it. I let it fall back to my side. "You deserved honesty," he said more gently now. "Instead, I got a ranking." I opened my mouth, closed it, because what do you say to that? I wanted to tell him I hadn't meant it the way it sounded, that I'd been trying to keep peace, to protect everyone's comfort. But comfort at someone else's expense is just cowardice dressed in manners. And he'd already paid. "You look healthy," I offered, clumsy. "I am." Another beat passed. The sky was darkening behind him, twilight turning the mountain ridge gold. "I saw the photo," I said, "in Earth Frame." He nodded once. They weren't supposed to publish it. Silence again. Are you happy? I asked. He considered. Not dramatic, not performative, just truth-seeking. Peaceful. I felt something in me collapse then. Not loudly, just an internal shift, a metric dissolving. The old scorecard, career, approval, aesthetics, optics, none of it reached this place. He wasn't punishing me. He'd just outgrown the game. I took one last breath, then said, I didn't see it then. He nodded again. I know. And then he turned, slats still balanced in one arm, and walked back toward the trees. Not angry, not retreating, just done. And I finally understood what that really meant. The folder was thicker than I expected. Cream-colored, clean edges, no binder clips or sticky notes, just weight, substance. I turned it over in my hands before opening it, my thumb running the crease like I could change its contents with enough pressure. We sat on a bench in full view of the courthouse cafe. Neutral ground, his counsel said. Public but calm. No performance. He didn't sit directly beside me. He chose the far side of the bench and placed the folder in the space between us like a line drawn in ink. His attorney stayed standing, watching from a polite distance under the overhang. Take your time, he said. The folder held no letters, no statements of emotion, just legal fact. Dates, signatures, notarized forms, asset separations, digital designations, transfer records, copies of things I had signed without reading carefully months before the wedding, others I hadn't even seen, things he had quietly routed through systems I didn't bother to learn. There was no drama in the language, no malice, just finality. The last section was labeled Irrevocable Actions Executed. Effective date, June 11th. That was 10 days before my sister's wedding. I looked up. You made this irrevocable before the wedding? He nodded once, calmly. Before you uninvited me, he said. I blinked hard. The bench felt smaller now. I didn't mean it like that. It came out hoarse, weaker than I wanted, but it was the truth. I hadn't thought it was cruelty. I thought it was convenience, a small, unfortunate trade-off to keep a day from being awkward. He didn't answer, didn't scoff, didn't smirk, just sat there, still. I flipped back to the start of the file, scanning again. His stake in our startup, fully reassigned. The condo's lease, surrendered. His copyrights, his licensing shares, even the digital media account we'd shared for years, divided or released. Not a single loose end remained. I told myself he left impulsively, that maybe I could reason him back, find the emotional thread, pull gently, remind him of what we'd built. But this wasn't a thread, it was a ledger, and every line item was dated, witnessed, complete. You planned all this, I said softly, more to myself than to him. He didn't flinch. I prepared, he said. The words sat between us heavier than silence. The people around us chatted over lattes, waited in line, laughed at something someone said on speakerphone. Life moved on. He reached into his coat pocket and took out a simple black pen, placed it on the folder, stood. I'll leave that with you. Then he nodded to his attorney, who joined him without a word. They walked down the steps and out into the street without looking back. I stayed on the bench for another hour, reading, rereading, holding pages I should have cared about 2 years earlier. The ledger hadn't changed. I had just never bothered to open it. I was brushing my teeth when Nina sent the link. No message, just the episode title and a small speaker icon. The Exit You Didn't See Coming. Season 3, Episode 4, The Disappeared Partner. I didn't click it right away. I let it sit in the thread while I finished my morning routine. Teeth, moisturizer, coffee, a half-hearted glance at my calendar. I told myself it was probably unrelated. A coincidence. A theme that echoed something I'd gone through, but not me. But by the time I opened the browser, the episode already had over 200,000 plays. I clicked. A woman's voice, measured and crisp, opened the narration. This week, we explore what it looks like when someone doesn't rage, but simply removes themselves completely. She went on, talking about patterns, the way people mislabel endurance as weakness, the way slow erasure can start with a single shrug or a moment at the kitchen table. Then they started using specifics. He left no forwarding address, no social trace, no financial tether, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Then, she uninvited him from her sister's wedding, said it would make others uncomfortable. My stomach dropped. Photos flashed across the screen. This was the video version, not just audio. Shots from the wedding, my dress, my father giving a toast, my sister laughing, faces I hadn't seen in months. Not like this. I paused the video, rewound, let it run again. There I was, turning toward the camera with a champagne flute in hand. They blurred the guests' names, no surnames, no city tags, but it didn't matter. Anyone who knew me would recognize the moment, the venue, the people. The podcast host continued. He began planning his departure weeks before. Secure transfers, clean exits, legal precision. The music behind her voice was soft, steady, like someone closing a door gently. Then the audio changed. A man's voice, filtered just slightly distorted to conceal the speaker's identity, but not too much. I knew that voice. He spoke slowly. Sometimes, he said, being uninvited is the clearest form of invitation. To leave. Then silence. No elaboration, no bitterness. Just that one line. The comments section lit up in real time. Sympathy, admiration, speculation. This is how you walk away. He didn't just leave, he disappeared with grace. She lost a man who speaks like that. I scrolled too far, too fast. My hands weren't steady. People debated the ethics, the timing, the woman's motive. They didn't use my name, but they didn't have to. I closed the tab, opened it again. The video had crossed 1 million views by nightfall. I turned off notifications, then comments, then I deleted the wedding album from every public folder I'd ever stored it in. But the episode was already downloaded, mirrored, clipped, embedded. He hadn't exposed me. He hadn't even tried. He'd simply told the truth. And the world heard it, not with fury, not with vengeance, but with stillness. It was late, the kind of quiet that only happens when even the night animals have gone still. I was on the porch, nursing the last of the coffee, watching the sky bend into a colder blue. The co-op had finished early that day. We'd framed out the last cabin, and a kid from Saskatchewan had brought his dog to help haul wood. I'd laughed more than I expected to. The phone buzzed once. That old number, buried in the settings, still routed to a backup. I'd left it on just in case of emergencies. Never used it otherwise. Her name lit the screen. No emojis, no hey, just a line that looked like it had taken too long to write. I'm sorry, I didn't see it then. How did you move on so cleanly? I read it twice, then again. The porch creaked under my heel as I shifted. I didn't feel anger, not pity either, just a kind of quiet confirmation that the wave had finally reached her side of the ocean. I typed slowly, no edits, just the line that had lived in me since the day she chose her family's comfort over my presence. You taught me how to disappear. I hit send. The message blinked for a moment, then sat still. No delivered, no reply. I watched the wind lift the corner of a tarp tied to the lumber stack. Somewhere behind the ridge, a generator clicked off. I put the phone away. She never called again. And that, finally, was the end.